fellow bookworms to Timber's Den. My name is Whitney, and I have a Throwback Thursday for you guys today. We are going to be talking about the Thoroughbred series by Joanna Campbell. Really excited to talk about this series. I have the first 8 books in the series plus one of the super editions. There are 72 books total in the series and 4 super editions. So we are going to be talking about each book kind of in turn. I will say though, I had mentioned previously that I kind of lost interest in the series after it switched from Asleigh as the main character over to Samantha, and that still holds true. I definitely did not enjoy the last 3 books as much as I did the first few books with Asleigh as the main character. So I think it just kind of got a little bit repetitive as far as like the drama and everything like that. Definitely very drama filled, but overall really enjoyable, especially, if you have a young son or daughter who's really horse crazy. It's definitely more aimed for young girls, like preteen to early teen girls. But let's say if they're really into racing and horses in general, they'll probably enjoy the series. But it does, and I think, as a kid, I enjoyed the drama. I just found it a little repetitive as an adult. So, but we'll go ahead and talk about each book in turn. Before I do, I know I haven't been very consistent. So, if you are interested in my videos, definitely please make sure you are subscribed and you do have the bell notification pushed. And then go ahead and give this video a like while you're at it. It really does help out the channel. I am going to try to be a little bit more consistent, but it's just been a really rough year. Each month things have kept coming up, so hopefully I can get more consistent. But if you want to make sure you are notified, like I said, subscribe and hit that bell notification. So let's go ahead and talk about these books. I'm going to start with the super edition because it's kind of a prequel to the other books, and that's how I read them, and it works out really well to read them that way. So we're going to talk about this. I think one of the other super editions is also a prequel to this one. Like, it takes place before this one, so it's kind of a prequel to the prequel, even though they were written later on. And overall, like, the author did really, really good tying this into the events that took place before they ended up at Townsend Acres. Um, but there was just one inconsistency, which I saw somebody else noted as well when I was kind of looking to see how many books there were and what the other super editions were about. And the super edition, the first super edition, I forget the name of it, but it takes place before this one. I guess it starts off at a racing track, and in this book they go to the races. They have one of their colts that were bred on their farm and then sold is racing his first race, and I guess they frequently go to the races because it's one of Ashley's favorite things. But when you head over and start reading the Thoroughbred series, it says Ashley has never been to the races, which was kind of a big inconsistency. But other than that, like, she captured, the events that took place, like that were mentioned here. Ashley's first horse, Stardust, and the loss of some of their stock because of an illness and things like that. Like, it really did capture that in this prequel. So, but in this one, you have the Griffins, and they have their own small breeding farm. So Ashley, there's kind of a few different plots that are going on. Ashley's the first plot is kind of Ashley trying to get her grades up so that her parents will give Stardust to her as her own horse. They have a couple of riding horses on the farm in addition to their breeding stock, and Ashley really wants Stardust. And so, in the beginning of the book, she's working really hard to get her grades up so that way she can call Stardust her own. And then it goes on to kind of more drama. There's thieves in the area that are stealing some of the horses, and one of their mares and foals gets stolen. And so there's kind of that drama. Her best friend has her horse stolen, and so there's kind of drama with her trying to help her friend find her horse, even though they're 11 years old. Like, what are they gonna do, right? And then it goes on to this disease that is sweeping the area and really hits her family's farm hard, which, I mean, is very true. Like, it can easily happen. Um, and so that was very realistic. I have to say, with this one though, I was surprised at how dark it got in the end there with the disease. Like normally when you have something that heavy in a children's book, the author will kind of skim through it, but she really went there with that topic. And so I'm going to read a little passage that I marked here. And so this is a little bit of a spoiler and a just kind of a trigger warning that it does deal with the loss of a foal and kind of actually dealing with that grief, not only because she lost this foal, but she also was right there when it happened. So but I'm gonna go ahead and read it. So Asleigh ends up staying out in the barn. She's really connected to this foal. They've already lost multiple horses at this point, and so she's trying to save this foal. And so she ends up staying out, spending the night in the barn to take care of him. Well, she ends up falling asleep, and when she wakes up, the foal has passed away. So it says, "Asleigh, sweetheart," Mr. Griffin said. He held out his hand. "Let's get you to the house and warmed up." "I can't leave Black Knight alone," Asleigh insisted. "He's cold already." She hugged the colt's unresisting head tighter to her chest. She saw her parents exchange concerned glances. "Asleigh, we'll take care of him now," Caroline said quickly. "You've done enough. Don't worry, we won't leave him alone, I promise." Asleigh burst into tears. "Good," she sobbed, "because he's still little. I don't want him to wake up and find nobody here and be cold." And that just, I mean, it goes on, there's more conversation there. But, I've dealt with a lot of animal death, throughout my lifetime being around animals and working in a veterinary clinic and such. And even recently, but they're just, I mean, how she captured it, but the fact that she went there, like, not only that this foal just passed away, but that whole scene there, with Asleigh, holding on to this foal's body and not wanting to leave him because she's afraid of him waking up and being cold, like, just absolutely heart-wrenching. And I think it really captured, what people go through when they lose an animal that they love. So that was very, very dark. And then at the end, it kind of gets a little bit brighter. So at this point, like I said, Ashley's reflecting back. She found her old diary, and now she's reflecting back on that time period, which is the bulk of the story. But now at the end, it says she's kind of thinking about her 11-year-old self. And she says, "And if I hadn't been wrenched away from Edgar Dell," Ashley thought as she stacked empty boxes inside each other, "I never met Mike or moved into our beautiful 200-year-old farmhouse. I wouldn't have my own training and breeding stable." 11-year-old Ashley sure was wrong when she thought that life would never be worth living again. And so again, it's very positive, but it touches on that dark aspect of being so heartbroken that, and in just such a dark place that you don't see what there could be worth living for. And so even though Ashley's 11 years old at that time that all this is going on, and she's just lost hope, you really see that now as an adult, like, she can look back and be like, like, yes, that was a hard time in my life, but so much has happened since, so much positive things. And so I don't know, like, I think it really touched on that. And as hard as this would be, I think, for a child to read, I think it also opens up a good conversation to have with them as well. Because we know, even that young, children can still really struggle with mental health and such. So I think it is one that I wouldn't necessarily just set your child to read and be like, here you go. But it's something to maybe have a conversation with them about, if they are going to be reading this. But otherwise, I would say if you're reading this together, it's a good way to open up that conversation for sure. So, but like I said, that was one of the super editions and sort of a prequel to the Thoroughbred series, which the Thoroughbred series, it starts off with the Griffins moving to Townsend Acres, which is a thoroughbred breeding and training farm for racehorses. And so in the beginning, you're still following Asleigh. She's the main character, and then it kind of switches over to Samantha, and then also switches over from Townsend Acres to White Brook. So kind of a transition there. And it did sound like, kind of looking and reading some of the comments and such on the other books, that it does kind of transition, and White Brook's more the focus. But obviously, I haven't read those books, so I can't say for sure. But in the first one, you have a horse called Wonder, and in this one, there is a foal that's born and she's kind of sickly. So Ashley's determined to save her. Obviously, she's still kind of raw from the horses they lost at their own breeding farm and everything. And so she's determined to save this little foal. And she does. And but now, because the foal is kind of sickly and behind the other foals, she doesn't look as promising. The owner's thinking about selling her. So it's kind of Ashley, taking care of this foal, and then also trying to get her to catch up in growth to the other foals, so the owner will keep her and not sell her. And so yeah, it's, obviously there's a lot of drama there. What's gonna happen to this foal? We obviously know, the foal is fine because she's part of the other books. So, but yeah, this one was pretty sweet, but I definitely felt, that connection between Ashley and the foal and really trying to save her. I just think the kind of overall theme is kind of unrealistic in a sense, but most of the children's books are like, you have these kids and they're doing things that they wouldn't necessarily do in real life, which definitely is the case here. But there's just something about Ashley and her connection to this horse that just really pulls at me. One of my favorite shows is Wildfire, which was an ABC family show. And it's so cheesy rewatching it sometimes, and you're just like, why do I enjoy the show? But there's something about her connection to Wildfire that just pulls at me every time, and I absolutely love it. And I get that same feeling between Ashley and Wonder. And so it really, really pulls at me, and I think that's another reason why I really enjoyed Ashley's portions of this book, because it was really about that connection between Ashley and Wonder. So in this book, it's all about, saving Wonder and making sure she doesn't get sold as a yearling, or as a weanling rather. And then we move on to book 2, which is Wonder's Promise. So in this one, Wonder is starting to train to race, but she's having trouble. The trainer that's put in charge of the yearlings is kind of very handsy, very hands on, and kind of a little bit rough. He doesn't abuse the horses, but he's very rough with them. And Wonder is very sensitive. She had a lot of personalized care during her formative years, or formative year as a yearling, or a weanling rather. um I just can't talk. I'm getting all my words mixed up. But anyway, so she had a lot of personalized care as a baby, and as a weanling and such. So she's having a really hard time with the treatment that she's receiving, and she's a very sensitive horse. And so again, she's just not showing promise, and there's kind of a risk that she might be sold. And so Ashley's kind of determined to help with her training and get her where she needs to be, essentially. And there's a character in these books called Charlie Burke, and he used to be the head trainer, and then he retired, and they won't let him help with the training and such, so he's kind of just bleh. And so he ends up helping Ashley, and he's a very prominent character throughout, and he's one of my favorites too, along with Ashley. But anyway, so that's the premise of this book, is they're trying to get Wonder's training up to snuff, since she doesn't respond well to, being hands on and the whip or anything like that. And then we have book 3, which is Wonder's First Race. And so this is kind of misleading as far as the title, because in the beginning of the book she already races, um and then, you know it goes on to several other races, and then there's an injury, and everything. And throughout these books, you also have a kind of animosity between Asleigh and the owner's son, Brad. And there's kind of a rivalry between Wonder and her half sibling, which is Brad's horse that he's trained, Townsend Prince. And so there's kind of a rivalry there, and they kind of race each other, and they're always trying to one up each other essentially. But yeah, and this one, Wonder, it's all about Wonder's kind of beginning racing, and she ends up getting injured, and can she come back from that and win and everything like that. So there's that one. And then in book 4 you have Wonder's victory. And so in this one, she's, I think in book 3 she's headed towards the Kentucky Derby, and then in this one she's already done the Kentucky Derby, and now she's headed towards the Breeders' Cup. But her jockey Jilly, who is a woman and very soft, she doesn't, ride heavy or anything like that, ends up getting injured. So in this one, it's all about, well, who's going to ride Wonder, and can Asleigh do it? And will her parents let her, and things like that, because she's very, very young. I think she's only 16 at this point. And so, what's going to happen with Wonder's future, because she won't let another jockey ride her. She's, again, a very sensitive horse. So, what's going to happen? Like, can she win now that Jilly's got hurt, essentially? So, that's book 4. And then we move on to the last book that features Asleigh as the main character, and this is called Asleigh's Dream. This is book 5. So at this point, Wonder's now a broodmare, and she is given birth to a colt, and Asleigh ends up buying her own horse to train and race. So in this one, we're also introduced to Samantha, who is the next main character. And Asleigh ends up getting hurt, and so Samantha wants to take over as Fleet Goddess's exercise rider. That's the horse that Asleigh bought. But Samantha lost her mother in a horse accident, and so her father refuses to let her ride. And Fleet Goddess's future kind of rests on her training. Like, um, she needs this training because Fleet Goddess kind of has a weird quirk. Um, but there's still the animosity between Asleigh and Brad, who is, again, the owner's son. And so he's kind of making it hard for Asleigh to train her horse, because he doesn't like that she has her horse on their property. And so he refuses to let her use any of the exercise riders or anything like that. And so Samantha's basically it. A lot of drama there. But I really did overall enjoy that one as well. And then we get to the last 3 books, which mainly focus on Samantha. Asleigh is still a big part, but she's not the main character, and it's not from her viewpoint, which, again, I just didn't like. So in book 6, it's Wonder's Yearling. And so Wonder's foal is now a yearling, Wonder's Pride, and he is in training now. But the farm, Townsend Acres, has hit some financial difficulties, and so obviously their most valuable horse, they might have to sell him. And so Samantha's trying to save Wonder's Pride from being sold, um, and show the owner that he needs to keep him, because he's worth more on the farm than selling him, essentially. So that's kind of the big drama there. And then in book 7, you have Samantha's Pride, and again, the Townsend Acres is still in trouble, and Pride has been doing really well as far as racing, but because the farm is still in trouble, he gets pushed too hard, and he essentially gets over raced. And so there's kind of a little bit of drama surrounding that, and kind of how it affects Pride, and then he's not earning for him and such. So that's kind of the deal with book 7. And then we move on to book 8, And at this point, you're focusing on Samantha, but at this point they're over at Whitebrook now, and there is Sierra, who is a young colt who just he is full of high spirits, and he doesn't run for them. And so they're trying to figure out, he has really good bloodline, so they're trying to figure out how to get him to run, but he's just not interested in it. So again, you have the risk of him being sold, and Samantha is just like, no, he has too much potential to be sold. And so she's trying to figure it out. And this is Sierra's Steeplechase, and so they learn that he likes to jump, and that actually holds his interest, and he's willing to run. And so that's kind of the premise of him, like, just, can he be a steeplechaser? And then something happens, and again Samantha has to ride. And so it just kind of goes back, and like I said, that's kind of a repetitive theme of something happened, and then you have this young teen that is going to be riding these horses and the risk involved with that. But overall, all the books were pretty enjoyable. Like I said, I definitely enjoyed Ashley's portion of the books over Samantha's portions. And I think it's just because it had that connection. And even once you lose, it focuses from Wonder to Wonder's Pride, you kind of lose that a little bit. Like there's still that connection, but it's just not as strong between Ashley and Wonder. And so even then I started losing a little bit of interest, but it still had Ashley, and I like just her overall vibe and such. But with Samantha, there's a lot of similar themes as far as like being a teenager and such, and boys and whatnot. Neither one of them was really interested in boys, and then there's one that ends up catching their eye. And even the boys are very similar. You have Mike, who is into racing, and then you have Tor, who's into jumping, but they're both horse guys, and they kind of get it. They're very similar in looks and everything. And even the drama just kind of gets a little bit repetitive as far as, well, will the horse be able to race, and who's going to ride the horse and everything like that. Like, I did enjoy the drama with like Townsend Acres and the financial struggles because it was something different, but the other drama kind of gets very, very repetitive. And it's not, because it's so fast paced and it's focusing on the racing and such, you don't get quite that personal aspect, which I think even with as fast paced as it was in the first books, you got that in the first books, and you had that family dynamic between Ashley and her family, which is one thing that does really bug me about children's book, is it focuses so much on the kids and what they're doing, but it's like, where are their families? Like, I mean, family plays a big part, and one thing I enjoyed about the first portion of the Thoroughbred books is the family plays a big part. Like, you see Ashley's home life too. And you do get glimpses of it with Samantha, like her and her father eating dinner and talking about something, but it's just not as prominent. With Ashley, you have her parents, and you have her sister and her younger brother, and that family dynamic is very, very present, which I like, because to me that's more realistic. But overall, like I said, they're an enjoyable series. Very simply written, very fast paced, easy to get through. And so I think if you have a child who's horse crazy, and who really likes racing, they're gonna really enjoy the series. And like I said, it does kind of start introducing jumping as well, in Samantha's portion of the book, so it's not just racing focused, but I think it does cover jumping a little later on as well, from what I read as well. Or, from what I read, as far as like looking at some of the other books and some of the reviews and such, I think jumping does play a part as well. It's just not as prominent. Obviously, it's about racing, the series is, so that makes sense that that would be the main focus of the books themselves. So, but yeah, overall pretty enjoyable. Like I said, not one I'm necessarily interested in continuing the series on or anything like that, but maybe one your child might, if they're, looking for a series that is a little bit longer and something that will keep their interest. Definitely one to check out and see if they'll enjoy it. So do use caution with Ashley's Diary if they're going to be reading that one, just because you do have that loss, and it does really take a deep look into that. So I think I am done talking because I'm kind of losing my thought process here. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. If you've read this series before, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And I'm going to leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.